So good morning to everybody. Thanks very much for being here on a long weekend, Sunday morning, afternoon for some, Sunday morning for others. Today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and other free tech for dads, specifically the do's and don'ts of using ChatGPT, and then we'll also delve into using Canva as a means to connect with your kids and do good things for them. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get this underway. Following this meeting, we will open up for question and answer, but during the recording, I may call on anybody to kind of make submissions as to what they want to accomplish. And I have access to ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, and also ChatGPT 4, which is the subscription-based version. And we'll discuss that a little bit more once we get into the workshop. So here we go. Okay, can someone just turn on their mic and confirm that you can see the screen?
All good.
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and other free tech for dads, including the do's and don'ts of using ChatGPT for creating legal documents. We'll be talking about ChatGPT 3.5. And the last update for ChatGPT 3.5 was in September of 2021, so it can't really reference much in the way of case law from before September 2021. We'll also be talking about ChatGPT 4.0, and the latest update for 4.0 is 2023, and that costs $20 a month, and that's US dollars a month for a subscription. And effectively, like when you're using ChatGPT for law, users can input specific information and instructions for the legal document they wish to create. The system then uses OpenAI's advanced language processing capabilities to understand the input and generate a complete document that meets your needs. The other interesting thing that we kind of started to analyze was you can add the submissions of your either opposing counsel or of the person with whom you are in this legal battle with, and have ChatGPT analyze it for both type B personality disorders, and that could be bipolar or antisocial personality disorders, or any of the type B personality disorders. Or you can ask ChatGPT to identify narcissistic languaging to see if what you're dealing with is a narcissist. So obviously ChatGPT is not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so it can't create those diagnoses, but it can offer, using a language model, it can offer analysis of their submissions so that you can see if there are narcissistic tendencies in your ex. As far as legal research and document review, lawyers often spend a significant amount of time and your money conducting legal research. And you can kind of jump in here. If you are being represented by a lawyer, you can use ChatGPT to kind of help refine your legal submissions so that you can send something cogent and understandable to your lawyer. Lets them know that you're kind of part of the team and that you're not relying solely on them to do all the legal research. If you need to kind of distill down what either your opposing counsel or what your lawyer is saying to you, you can ask ChatGPT to understand what's being written, or to synopsize or give you a summary of what's being said in a 10 or 20 page legal document. And then it can kind of effectively scan or summarize, summarize large volumes of text or case law and legislation. So it's really good at kind of saving time, not only for you to make submissions, but all to the opposing counsel if you're self-represented, but also for you to make submissions to your legal team if you are being represented by a lawyer, so that you don't come across as emotional. And I use that word cautiously because obviously all of our emotions are kind of running on a high, but just basically to put it into legalese or to put it into terminology that is acceptable and understandable to either opposing counsel or to your lawyer. I think a lot of the things, or one of the things that a lot of us have challenges with, is dealing with writer's block and not really knowing where to start. So getting started with ChatGPT is a really good way to get the ball rolling. It can create legal documents and contracts and letters, which can be obviously labor intensive. And if you're using a lawyer to create those, it can be very expensive. I don't know about you guys, but my family law lawyer, when before I exhausted all of my financial resources, was charging $450 an hour. So to have somebody, create documents or review documents, do legal research, obviously is very expensive. And you can use ChatGPT to help generate drafts based on given parameters and save you both time and money. The prompts that you use for ChatGPT sometimes can be very generic, especially when you start, and you may have to reshape the document, but it certainly gives you a head start as to where you want to go and what you want to accomplish. And sometimes just having that, having ChatGPT do an export of a document gives you a proverbial like ball of Play-Doh that you can start to massage and shape into what you ultimately want that communication to become. In terms of communicating with your lawyer, drafting and responding to your lawyer emails can take up a huge part of your day. Sometimes I know personally I get a feeling of anxiety and like somewhat triggered when I see the submissions of opposing counsel, and it takes me some time to respond to that. And I think you guys will likely feel the same way. But ChatGPT is good for drafting initial responses pretty quickly and easily. And I think it's important to discuss how specific the prompts are that you need to give the AI engine that you're using, whatever it is, if it's ChatGPT or if it's one of the other AI engines that are certainly available. So using prompts like respond to this letter in an empathetic tone or respond to this letter in a no nonsense tone, as if you were a highly credentialed Ontario family law lawyer, will get you the exact results that you're looking for. So if you just say, respond to this letter, it's not going to give you a specific tailored response or the specific tailored response that you're looking for. So the more specific the parameters are that you give the AI engine, the better the results you're going to achieve. In terms of meeting preparation, you can. So we got somebody else coming into the room. In terms of meeting preparation, if you're preparing to either meet with your lawyer or preparing for trial, or preparing for a settlement conference or a case conference, you can use ChatGPT or another AI engine. Today, we're specifically talking just about ChatGPT to prepare for meetings and court appearances, because obviously that takes a ton of time and effort and energy. You can use it to summarize kind of bullet point summaries of your top priorities. And again, that's done by giving the AI engine very specific instructions as to what you want it to produce. So you can try prompts like create a high-level summary of opposing counsel submissions and rebut them using Alberta family law rules, complete with case law citations. And the white bar at the bottom of the screen says, important, thoroughly research and review all case law citations. ChatGPT has been known to generate false cases in the past. So make sure that if you are relying on something that ChatGPT produces, that you thoroughly review what it produces and are ensuring that the case law that you're citing is actually beneficial to your case. As far as legal education, a lot of the time, none of us went through law school. Well, with the exception of one person on this call, no one went through law school. So familiarizing yourself and doing a little bit of kind of substantive legal education in advance, specifically related to the case that you're dealing with, like your own personal case, is important, especially when you're looking at keeping up to date with new laws, rules, and regulations, because the laws change based on not only case law, but interpretation of the case law by judges or by other counsel. So ChatGPT can provide you a summary of the key points of new legal updates in a digestible format. And you can ask it to kind of like effectively summarize the information in layman's terms rather than in legalese, which is sometimes difficult for all of us to understand. So trying prompts like summarize all relevant case law in British Columbia regarding child abduction in the last 2 years. ChatGPT does a pretty good job, especially ChatGPT 4, which is the subscription model, which was updated in March 2023, does a pretty good job of that. And we'll go through some kind of real world examples of how this works. And I'll ask you guys for prompts and we can see what the AI engine generates. In terms of legal opinions, writing legal opinions involves kind of careful thought and precision. ChatGPT can help by providing an initial draft based on the information that you give it, which you can then either give to your lawyer or you can review and edit it. An important point to note is that ChatGPT is not a legal expert, and it'll tell you this up front, like it's on the opening screen. If you haven't logged into ChatGPT before, it'll tell you that it's not capable of giving legal advice. So whatever content is provided by that platform should be used as a starting point and certainly not as final materials. And we'll go through that again in the kind of summary document or on the summary slide of the effective do's and don'ts of using AI for legal submissions. It is really good for tracking changes in case law or tracking changes in the law. So you might use a prompt like, tell me about the changes in the Ontario Family Law Act in the past 25 years, please. And I inputted this prompt yesterday and it did a really good job at kind of delivering the changes in the case law, including parental alienation, and including alienation from grandparents. There were some points that it covered on grandparental alienation, which I was not aware of. So that's interesting. You can use it to analyze references that have come from opposing counsel and also citations that they use. So ChatGPT can analyze all cases that cite specific statutes, regulations, or court rules. So, for example, we asked ChatGPT to name the most famous court cases that cite RV Gameshi, which was the fairly high-profile case in Toronto of a false allegation of sexual assault. And ChatGPT can do a pretty good job at scanning and summarizing large volumes of legal text, case law, and legislation. As far as searching and analyzing case law, this is something that not a lot of us have a great deal of skill or experience in doing. So you could start with commands like, what's the most relevant case law for cases involving sexual assault charges when the defendant lives in Nova Scotia, Canada, and they'll summarize that information for you. You could also say, what case law should I use for cases involving intimate partner violence when the defendant lives in Quebec, Canada? And it'll give you the relevant case law and citations or cases that deal specifically with that request. But again, it's important to give it very specific instructions as to what you want to accomplish. And the more specific the instructions you give it, the better the results it will generate. So there are many volumes of, or many hits, I suppose, that you can dig up on the internet about how lawyers are now using ChatGPT to write legal advice. And I guess the message is here, if the lawyers are using ChatGPT to write legal advice, then you can too. Some legal advice can be pretty simple and doesn't take much research, but a lot of the time you need to spend many hours to create it. And ChatGPT can streamline that process, and all you have to do is enter specific necessary input data. And you could ask it questions about divorce or spousal support or child support, about questions on damages in civil litigation, civil litigation cases, and many, many more. So here's kind of a summary of the effective do's and don'ts of using artificial intelligence for yourself and for your case. So you do use ChatGPT to summarize the documents you have already created. So, one gentleman was talking earlier on about, kind of taking the emotional tone out of an email or out of a submission or out of a communication. So if you write a document and then you can input that document into, kind of copy and paste the text into ChatGPT and give it a command to write it in the style of a lawyer in the province that you're in, it'll do a pretty good job of that. So do use ChatGPT to summarize documents that you've already created. Do use ChatGPT to change the tone of your legal submissions, which I guess is kind of saying the same thing, removing the emotion from it and making it more acceptable, and deliver it in a way that's not going to hurt your case and will help your case on a much higher level. Do give AI engines or ChatGPT specific instructions of what you want to accomplish. And we'll do some quick tests in a second. And do modify the output to add more of your personality and specifics about your case. So once ChatGPT has generated its response, it's important to kind of copy and paste that back into a document. And I think most of you know that legal documents usually need to be submitted in Times New Roman, font 12, or font size 12, double spaced. But once you've done that and recreated the submission in a Word document or a Google Doc or whatever the platform is that you're using to generate your documents, it's important to go back in and modify that output to make sure that you're putting some of you back into that and not just delivering the exact output that came from ChatGPT, or whatever search engine or whatever AI engine you're using, to put some of the humanity back into it, and using the output that's generated from AI as goalposts or a starting point and not your final submissions. So to kind of counter that, the don'ts. So don't use ChatGPT with simple, broad, generic commands, or it will give you broad, generic answers that may not be beneficial to your case. Don't use ChatGPT to create the final version of your legal submissions. And we kind of touched on that a little bit on the last slide. And don't rely on case law generated by ChatGPT without thoroughly researching the case law to make sure that it benefits your case and that it is exactly the case law that you're looking for to support the arguments that you're making. Don't just trust it to do everything perfectly. It might be great at writing songs. It might be great at telling somebody how to, change the rear tires on a Honda, or change the rear brakes on a Honda. It does lots of things really well, but it's important not to kind of put all your eggs in that basket and assume that it's going to issue perfect work every single time. So just to follow up on the very first slide, so ChatGPT has a subscription plan that's called GPT Plus, and that's how you access ChatGPT 4. Costs $20 US a month. The paid subscription model guarantees users can access ChatGPT even during peak times when the free version is at capacity, and offers faster response times. I've found that the response times are not significantly faster. I also haven't found that there's many times when I've used ChatGPT over the past 6 months, or 7 months, I guess, to where there's been any lag time where it's been at capacity. And I'll certainly, open the floor to discussion to see if anybody else has found that. There's something else I wanted to say about this slide, $20 a month. It's a recurring billing model. You can cancel it at any time. And yeah, ChatGPT Plus is how you access the kind of higher quality engine. The limitation to the higher quality engine is that you can only submit 50 requests every 3 hours. which isn't usually an issue for most people unless you're just pounding through massive amounts of submissions in case law. But that is a limitation that you should be familiar with. Okay, so we're going to dive in and try some prompts. I'm just going to stop share for a second. And then we'll come back to this in just a moment. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or does anybody have any prompts that they want to put into GPT or GPT-4? I guess GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 before we move into kind of open submissions?
I have a couple of ideas.
Yeah, sure. Carl, your mic is a little bit muffled. I'm not sure if it's.
I'll see if I can turn it up a little bit.
That sounds better.
It sounds, or I could just talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, is that a little bit better? Actually, I changed the settings.
Yep.
Yeah, it's okay. All right. Yeah. So I think I appreciate the presentation. I think we covered a lot of really important points, like not to leave the output in raw format and all that. I have used ChatGPT a fair amount to kind of, like you said, get a head start on content. And I found one place where it really excels is in lists, like lists and instructions and things like that. And in a lot of legal documents, most paragraphs are numbered paragraphs, right? So that's technically a list. And I mean, I've used it for a whole bunch of different things. Like I think Paul mentioned writing email, stuff like that. Like one thing it's good at is writing templates, right? Where you can fill in your name, fill in, who it's to, who it's from, dates, etc. And yeah, I mean, a couple of examples. One way that I use it, I know, like. Yeah, just giving it content and asking it to sort of just write the whole thing, it kind of needs to know a lot of those details, right? I find for myself one way that I sort of think is in point form, and then ChatGPT is pretty good at expanding the points into full paragraphs, right? So it's like if your specialty isn't the English language and you're not a great, linguist or writer, but you do know what you want to say, writing it out in really simple cues and point forms, I think is good. So I can paste like a few bullets. You mentioned pasting something and seeing a prompt, Gavin. I could paste a couple of bullet points. You could try feeding that in to ChatGPT, getting a prompt from that. All right, I'll paste it in the chat here.
Okay, sounds good. And so I'll do my best to try and monitor the. I got 3 screens on the computer, so I appreciate. I'll do my best to monitor who's got their hand up first. Shane, you got your hand up. Do you want to ask the engine?
Is it just family law that one works with?
No, nope.
Or is it all laws?
It works with all laws. It works with civil, criminal, and family.
Sweet.
Right, so Gavin, I'll just paste this in here. You should be able to take it, I guess, pretty much as is, and just feed it to the prompt. So I basically did a really rough, just kind of instruction for ChatGPT at the beginning, what I wanted to do, and then I just gave it point form of what I want in that offer. Even passing in an instruction like place each point in a numbered paragraph might be good to place at the end of the prompt. And it should be able to go through and then expand those into paragraphs.
You couldn't have just done this in one simple cut and paste. Now I have to do 2.
Yeah, I have to do 2.
All right, guys, I'm gonna do a quick screen share again, and I'll show you the ChatGPT, and then we'll go through Carl's prompt. And then, sorry, Shane, did that answer your question, or is that's okay? Perfect. Okay. Okay, and can someone just confirm verbally that you can see the screen?
All good.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so this is the home screen for ChatGPT. If you haven't used it before, obviously in the middle it says don't share sensitive information. And at the bottom it says check your facts. Well, we have safeguard. ChatGPT may give you inaccurate information. It's not intended to give advice. Up at the top, you'll see ChatGPT 3.5 or ChatGPT 4. So, Carl, do you want to use 3.5 or do you want to use 4? I guess we'll use 3.5, which is the free version, just for everybody, so that we're not kind of giving more than what you would be able to get if you subscribed for free. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back into the chat and sorry, Carl, I can't see the chat at the same time as sharing screen. Can you tell me what the appendix or what the pieces that you wanted to add to it?
Yeah, at the end of that, on a new line, you could just say, place each bullet point in a numbered paragraph of its own, because that's going to be what it needs to be in the legal document at the end.
Okay. So ready, concise, and formal settlement offer for family court as the respondent. Is that what you were expecting, Carl, or were you expecting something more?
Yeah, can you hear me actually?
Oh, can you zoom? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I think you can hear me. Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of what I'm saying. You can see how what I put in as input is quite a bit shorter, and it's really just cue points. Like I didn't use proper English, I didn't think about grammar. I just kind of put what was in my head into very basic bullet points. And what it did is it just went through and wrote a lot of the English and expanded that. So really all that needs to be done now is for that to be reviewed and kind of adjusted a little bit and, make sure it's original, etc. But it kind of gets a lot of the linguistics hammered out, which is sort of the middle, right? So you kind of put the ideas in at the beginning. It does a lot of the middle work, and then you can sort of review and edit at the end to make it your own.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so that's the first submission. Does anybody else have any other submissions that they'd like me to kind of put in or to get a response from, or do you feel kind of semi-comfortable with using that technology? Any questions at this point?
I don't have any questions, but thank you for the app knowledge. I didn't know that was there.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, have you had any experience using this with Canly, or can you pull anything out of Canly by going in through ChatGPT?
So the short answer is it will pull relevant case law about high profile cases. And anything that it doesn't or is unable to find, it'll actually refer you to Canly to go search that information on Canly. So I did that a couple of times last night, as a matter of fact. I was looking for specific cases that it didn't have access to because they were before 2019, or sorry, before 2021, which is the last update, or I guess, sorry, after 2021, which is the last update. And it just said, for more detailed information, you can access canly.org and look through that specific engine.
Can you talk just a little bit, how does that work with the pre-19? Like, so it's not like a search engine where it's scanning and pulling information from all of the same type of resources if it's limited to a certain date of inception, or how does that work?
So effectively, ChatGPT was updated. GPT 3.5 was most recently updated, I believe, in September of 2021. So that's all the kind of relevant case law that it would have access to. The subscription service was updated in March 23rd, 2023. So it would have access to a considerably larger amount of case law. And I think, ultimately what they're trying to do, or what OpenAI, which is the engine that runs ChatGPT, is trying to do, is find a way to monetize the service. So they gave it away for free for lots of people, and then ultimately try and get you to make subscription payments. And I think the company's now valued at $70 billion. So they've done that in a very short period of time.
Just one thought. I did actually. I have the desktop version installed 3.5 on my PC. So I have ChatGPT on my phone, on my Android phone.
Mhm.
Just it's obviously not 3.5 version. I don't know. I haven't done any research, so I don't know exactly what version they're putting on it is an actual version though, but I don't know what version of Chat GPT it is. It's an Android version, but obviously it's not going to be the full 3.5, I assume.
Oh, I would think that 3.5 is the only option that's available for either iPhone or Android at this point. Like, they're not offering the 3, which was available back in 2022. Everything has moved up to 3.5. So
Okay.
that's the latest free version, and that's typically what's available to everybody, regardless of what device you're using.
Given where we're all kind of some of us are a little stressed out and going through things. When I opened up you started the presentation, I opened up my desktop version of Chat, and I actually even did a search. Silly me, I don't even remember. I did it in June. Divorce parenting plan for alienated parents in Canada. Yeah, and so I haven't even had a chance to fully read it. I forgot I even put that in. That's just where we're at mentally sometimes, right? So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point. Sometimes you get so foggy, or I don't mean to use these terms negatively by any means, but there's just this state of overwhelm and this kind of almost haze or cloud that we're trying to deal with. And prioritizing things becomes difficult, and focusing on an outcome becomes difficult. And that's where I find ChatGPT does a fairly substantial job. I've been able to use it with many of the guys who exist within our organization with CCMF to help them kind of work on their own submissions, and I think it's very helpful. But to Carl's point, you have to give it specific tasks that you want it to do, and I think it's good for creating writing. Like, it's a language model engine, so it's, if you have a starting point to enter into ChatGPT, it can do a good job. If you're asking it to do all the work that a lawyer would normally engage with, I think you're probably asking too much. I just saw that Paul posted in the chat that 4.0 is leaps and bounds ahead of 3.5. So even if you wanted to subscribe for $20 for a month and make use of it for a month, and then cancel your subscription, that might not be the worst idea. Gerard, and then Day. Gerard, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. The question I had was, you indicated that you can determine writing styles from written affidavits and that kind of thing. First question is, how do you input that data? Is it imported somewhere? Do you cut and paste it? And what was my other question? How do you define parameters of what you're looking for? Like if it was parental alienation or some other type B cluster malady.
Yeah, so you would have to do a little bit of, to answer your first question, I took a submission from my opposing counsel, and the command that I gave ChatGPT was analyze the submission for narcissistic language patterns.
Okay.
And then I pasted the submission in, and it gave me an analysis of all the narcissistic language patterns. Now, in order to balance this and understand how they might rebut it. I also put my submission in and said, analyze this for narcissistic language patterns so that I would be able to rebut what it was saying.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
If you understand what the potential type B personality disorder is that you're looking for, using that input, ChatGPT will run a language analysis of whatever the submission is that has been sent to you. You can't go back and say, well, look, it's clear that these people are narcissists, but you can indicate in oral submissions in court that you've used various methods, especially if they are reluctant to submit to a legal or sorry a mental health analysis. In the absence of their compliance with my request to submit to a mental health analysis, I was able to use this language model to indicate that either my lawyer or opposing counsel or the applicant, I guess the applicant in your case, has tendencies of narcissistic personality disorder. And you have to pre-qualify that and say, like, I'm not a doctor, but I've just used this tool to try and identify things in the absence of a formal medical analysis.
Okay, just to be clear, thank you.
Okay, a bunch of hands up. Day, go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin, for this information, and thanks for inviting me for this session. So I know I have been using ChatGPT 3.5. I think it is updated until 2021 September. So from that point onwards, now we are in 2023 August. The law may have changed. My question is there a risk using ChatGPT 3.5 against 4? If the law have changed, their answers may be different between two versions, right?
Yeah, so I've done so I was a little bit selfish and actually did some research on my own case with ChatGPT and with ChatGPT 4, and it still spits out the same result that it doesn't have case law before September of 2021, even in ChatGPT 4. So there are certainly some limitations to it. And I think Paul's got his hand up. He can probably speak a little bit because I know he's used it pretty frequently about the legal ramifications of that. Paul, I may skip ahead. And do you have a question or do you want to comment on that?
Thanks.
I just wanted to comment and elaborate on what you were saying about having a conversation with ChatGPT. I think that's really useful in my experience. Is what I've done is actually argued with ChatGPT on both ends and try to have ChatGPT bring up actual either case law, which again, we've mentioned that it's sometimes spotty in that way, but you can actually make it, you can have an actual argument with it, and it will. What's interesting is what ChatGPT does is it actually brings up the opponent or the other party's arguments, and it will kind of shed light into what these people tend to say. Like when we're all fathers here, I assume. When I've argued with ChatGPT, I say, what would be the likely argument against having 50-50 custody with my child? And it brings up a lot of the baseless arguments that these people tend to bring up, and it gives you kind of a good idea of what could be coming down the pipeline, what kind of arguments they'll be bringing up in court, and how to argue against them, how to discredit those arguments. So yeah, I just wanted to touch base on that have arguments with ChatGPT on both sides, and it's really it's really telling, and yeah, it gives you a lot of information. So
I think it's also important, and Paul, to your point, to have those kind of arguments and to have ChatGPT propose like what opposing counsel or like how they might respond to a parental alienation request, or something like, why shouldn't I have 50-50 custody with my child? And then you ask it, like, based on those responses, how would you respond to this in the tone of Paul, I know you're in British Columbia, a British Columbia family court lawyer. And or you could say, how would you respond to this counterpoint in an aggressive tone in from a famous British Columbia family court lawyer or something like that. Again, the more finite the instructions you give to ChatGPT, the better the result is going to be. And you can really, once you put, and I'll show you some of my historic kind of searches, and we can kind of go down a rabbit hole and figure that out. But you can really go a long way with a couple of quick inputs. So I'm just going to figure out where the hell my mouse is. Okay, there we go. Mark, you had your hand up next, and then Carl.
Yeah, no, you spoke a little bit at the beginning about using both versions, and then Paul mentioned that what was your chat there, Paul? I don't have it. Leaps and bounds, fours, leaps and bounds. Without getting into too much detail for time, obviously, can you expand a little bit on leaps and bounds above 3.5?
Yeah, just in the responses that it gives, the ability to detect and draft language, the ability to follow your directions, because if you start using ChatGPT, you'll recognize there's a lot of this. It's not free, like it's not like there's a lot of wokeism, with lack of better terms. There's a lot of this wokeism, or this it's throttled. And ChatGPT 4 is a lot better in that aspect, that you can get it, you can prompt it to kind of do what you want it to do a lot easier than 3.5. I would probably do what Gavin recommended, if you're able, is to spend the $20 and just kind of play with ChatGPT 4 and see if that's something you could do, and then just cancel the subscription. But I've noticed I actually pay for the subscription because it's that much better than 3.5. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
Cool. Thanks for that, Paul. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought of another example if you wanted to do a prompt, just another use case. Is that possible?
Yeah, of course.
Sure. So one other thing that's helpful is ChatGPT, that, like I found anyway, ChatGPT can save conversations, right? There is an option to turn that off so that when you log back in, it hasn't saved anything. But I mean, one of the facts about this is if it can save history, you can give it a whole bunch of case specific content, facts, all that kind of thing. And you can ask it questions like, you can say, what happened on this specific date? Who was involved, right? But first you have to teach it what the facts are. So I thought one way we could do an example of this would be to go to Canly and get some facts from a specific case. Like I just went and grabbed a few paragraphs that have dates and names and stuff like that. I can paste those for you if you want to just paste that into the prompt. So yeah, something like, giving ChatGPT the instruction here, remember these facts, right? And then paste the facts. And then after that point, when it gives you a prompt again, you can actually say what happened on November 29th, 2019, or what are the names of the people who are involved in these facts, or, like you can ask it all kinds of things, and it'll actually know based on the content you've chosen to give it. This could be your own case. This could be a case on Canly, etc. So I'll just paste in a little bit of text to give it some content.
Sounds good.
On the chat. It says my message is too long, so I'll have to do it in a couple of pieces. Unless you want to go to Canly and grab some facts yourself, maybe that's easier.
If you want to email it to me, Carl, I can pull it up by
Okay.
email and grab it that way.
All right. Yeah, so this was just a case 2017 ONSC 7245, just some random case I pulled up on Camry. All right, I got that sent your way, Gavin.
Okay.
So I chose, I just chose 4 paragraphs. So there should be some different things like dates and names and some of the issues.
Sorry for the delay. Just waiting for it to come in. I think my computer's running at like 110% capacity.
It can even get into deeper questions too. Like if you paste the facts of your own case, what I've realized is you can even say things like, you know, consider the position of the respondent. What are some of the best arguments to use? Things like this. And it can actually go pretty deep into what it can add. Like it can give you basic factual questions. Like if you forget dates, be like, what date was the appeal on or something like that. It can just give you the date right away, right? You can kind of query your own case if you give it the content, but also asking it for its opinion, like its kind of legal opinion on, on what the parties can do. And I think Paul was saying a little bit about this, like passing the arguments back and forth, like trying to look at the case from the other party's point of view as well. GPT can definitely provide actually some fairly deep insight into that, which I think is interesting.
I don't have anything from you yet, brother.
Carl, sorry.
What
Carl,
email did you send it to, Carl?
Yeah, I sent it to your CCMF address, Gavin.
Okay.
Sorry, it was it? I had somebody else.
Mark, did you have a question or someone just asked?
Sorry, a lot of the comments you've just been making, Carl, is do you have any experience or any of those trying to think of the word I'm trying to use, achievable through 3.5 or exclusively through 4 based on your experience, what you're talking now with the back and forth opposition's view and that type of thing, or have you only had experience using 4 for that?
So my experience with 4 is limited, but not non-existent. I have used it a little bit. I use 3.5 myself, but I do quite a few modifications to the output and a lot of different things on the input. Yeah, I don't think I have enough experience between the two, but I found just for myself that 3.5 was sufficient. I can say that for sure. How much better 4 would be, I don't think I've really done quite enough experimentation to know, but I get by with 3.5. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I've tried submissions in both 3.5 and then switched over to 4 and tried them in 4, and 4 certainly gives you more diverse and elaborate responses, but I don't know if it's significantly better than 3.5. But again, like I think if you can afford the $20, trying it out for a month, and then you can kind of switch back and forth and see the difference for yourself, might not be the worst $20 you've ever spent. So, Carl, I got your message. I've pasted it into ChatGPT, so I'm just going to share screen again. And maybe what I'll do is we'll try this in 3.5, and then we'll also try it in 4. So this is the submission that Carl sent. And I'll zoom in so you can see what the response is.
Yeah, so I started with a simple instruction at the top. I just said, remember these facts, right? That's what instructs GPT to load it into memory. After that, this was just paragraphs from family I took. After that, you can ask it specific questions, like what happened, provide a very concise summary of what happened on December 8th, or what happened in May of 2016, right? Just questions to query your case.
Okay. So then this is the response from GPT 3.5. So it's
gone the extra mile.
Yeah.
See, so it's combining some of the things we told it before with some of the new facts, right? That's kind of what you got to watch out for. I mean, if we had have started just a fresh conversation, it has nothing, no prompts been made yet, and you just say, remember these facts and give it that, then, that's all it really knows at that point, right? And then those queries are effective.
Okay, so let's just switch over to 4. And we'll put the same input in.
Yeah, that was a little more what I was thinking.
Sorry, say again?
I said that was a little bit more of the response I was thinking it would give. Like, okay, I got it. Is there anything else you'd like to know?
Okay, so then we can say what happened on December 8th, 2015.
Yeah.
Ask it for maybe a comprehensive overview or something like that as well.
Okay, so I'll ask for a summary first. Okay, and give a comprehensive of the case, Paul.
Yeah, something like that.
I don't even know what this case is about. What are the grievances here? So it's a family law case. We'll give a comprehensive overview of
Maybe the outcome of this.
As it relates to changes in So I'll just try and zoom in so everyone else can see.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So give a comprehensive overview of this case as it relates to changes in Canadian family law.
Yeah, there you go.
Is that big enough for you guys to see?
Yeah.
So there you go. So here's the parties involved. Here's the, when the legal proceedings were initiated, the constitutional question, charged or challenged the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, further proceedings and delays, implications on family law.
Now maybe ask what the next step for either party would be or something like that. Try to get it to predict. Yeah, there you go.
I don't mean to be scrolling too fast. I'm just zoomed in too far so you can't see everything all at once. Lastly, candidates should be mentally and emotionally prepared for the long haul. Constitutional challenges are complex, or can be complex, time-consuming, and emotionally draining. So I think this is it's essential to have a support system and ensure he's making the best decisions that are in the best interest of his child, Brody. So I think it does a pretty good job here of kind of giving you 7 different, potential outcomes or next steps for Kenneth, despite the fact that we don't know who Kenneth is. Yeah, Carl, you got your hand up. Do you want to comment specifically on what's on screen right now, or can I stop sharing?
You can stop sharing, but that did lead me right into my point about this is so far a lot of the examples have been direct legal assistance, but there's obviously a lot of other challenges that we face. I've actually found even that ChatGPT isn't so bad at coming up with even personal points of advice, right? So if somebody's feeling overwhelmed, they're not sure what to do, even asking it for what are some different things like a father can do to who's in a separation case to look after his mental, physical, and emotional well-being. ChatGPT actually comes up with, in my opinion, sometimes, I mean, you never know what you're going to get, but from what I've seen, it has some all right ideas, right? So sometimes when it's hard to think of ideas on your own, some of them, like if it gives you a list of 10 things, maybe 2 of them you haven't thought of, but they're quite valuable. That's one thing I've found. So I can paste an example in the prompt for that as well. It's something short.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick screen share. This was actually a small win for me, and I don't mind sharing kind of my correspondence. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share. So just to give you a little bit of background, my ex is trying to get or wants me to sign a passport application for my son, and doesn't want to include the fact that there are legal proceedings going on in court. She actually submitted an application that said that there were no legal proceedings happening in court. So I said, I can't sign that because it's not legal. It's against the law. And they refused to include anything beyond a brief summary saying that there's nothing prohibiting him from traveling. I've requested from them that I know where they're traveling to, including flight numbers and so on and so forth, which is very reasonable in the eyes of the court. And so anyways, I'll just do a quick screen share and zoom in just so you can see kind of how I use this. I'll also give you, after we do the screen share, I'll give you the outcome. Okay. So the question was, this was using 3.5. What should I do if my ex's lawyer refuses to include family court documents as requested on a passport renewal application? And it gives you kind of a bunch of responses. Comply with any legal requirements, consider mediation, check in with the family court, all of which I did. Contact the passport office, so you can contact border services. And then I said, how should I respond to this email? And so this is what they submitted to me. In my view, there's nothing in the court file that's relevant to the issue of travel. I strongly disagree. And she says that my ex will be relying on this correspondence in seeking sole decision-making for my son in the future. So then it follows up with kind of aggressive legal responses, which have significantly changed the tone of the way the lawyers have dealt with me. So they sent an offer to settle back on August 1st, threatening to charge me for $20,000 in legal fees if I didn't comply with giving away my rights to my son. I responded using kind of a personalized version of the ChatGPT responses, and they responded with something that was $80,000 better with no threat of charging me for what their court services were or what their submissions were. It's still not anywhere near what I want it to be. So I'm continuing to use ChatGPT to reformat these submissions. I just wanted to do one other quick thing. I think I can't remember who it was that was asking about language patterns. I just wanted to pull up that one. Let's do a quick screen share. Okay. Sorry for the rapid scrolling. So the first question was, narcissists talk with a certain language, right? And it said yes. Narcissists often talk with self-centeredness, grandiosity, entitlement, lack of empathy, manipulation, criticism and belittlement, lack of accountability. And then I said, can you evaluate writing to see if someone might have narcissistic language? And it says, as an AI model, I can certainly analyze a piece of writing to identify potential language patterns that align with narcissistic traits. However, it's important to know that comprehensive analysis, blah, 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 you need to have a professional assessment done. Please analyze this writing. So it does a pretty good job. So this is the command, please analyze this writing. So I put her submissions in. And then it tells you, try and zoom in a little bit here so you can read this properly. Based on the provided writing, there's several language patterns that may suggest the presence of narcissistic tendencies. Here's some observations. So self-centeredness and entitlement. They emphasize being the primary guardian, and shared gut to do won't work. Lack of empathy. The writer dismisses the other parent's ability to provide care and expresses concerns about their temper. Narcissistic language pattern is manipulation and control. Attempts to control the situation by suggesting the other parent should have a nearby residence. Lack of accountability, places the blame solely on the other parent, and grandiosity. So it can be helpful in identifying those language patterns. But again, I think I found this helpful in terms of she refused to get a psychological assessment. So this was something that we could use, or that I could use, in order to identify some of those tendencies. But as Paul was mentioning earlier, in terms of getting AI to argue with itself, I also ran the same test on myself. And it also identified that I had some narcissistic tendencies as well. I think everybody does. Not nearly as many as opposing counsel did. And my concern was that if my my ex was a narcissist, which I believe she is, and also her opposing counsel were narcissists, then it would be kind of N squared, or narcissist squared, if you will. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Or any other submissions I'll put in?
Did any of you guys find it necessary to put a preamble when you start off your searches? Whether you're relating to family court, family law, or family concerns, or just putting in the content and then automatically figuring it out?
I think you want to give it as much instruction as possible. So Mark, whereabouts are you located?
Alberta.
Okay, so I would say, respond in the tone of a family law lawyer in Alberta, or respond considering current case law, or current case law in the family courts in Alberta, or something like that. Just give it those parameters. Sorry, Carl, you had your hand up and then it went down. Is that what you were going to say?
Sorry about
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. The more specific instructions you give it, I mean, there's no limit to how much you can curtail its output, right? You can you can actually ask it to rewrite a previous statement it gave and say, okay, do that again, but this time be more terse, be more concise, be more formal, use Alberta case. Like you can, the more instruction you give it, the more refined its output will be specific to your case. And I think that's a good thing. Yeah. So just echoing what Gavin said.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead.
I'm familiar. The first time I was aware of this, I haven't really used it that much other than a few searches about the remembering what you had told it previously. So does that only work for that session, or if you save that on your left side there as a search for later, can you go back, or how does that work with the remembering? I have to apologize for my ignorance. I don't understand how long that's saved for. If you can go back and continue, or it's the one during that session.
I think, like Carl, I'll certainly open the floor to you in a second, but I think what you're doing, the way AI works is you're training it to understand what you want it to do. So if you give it parameters and ask it to remember those parameters or this specific case law as it relates to your case, I've trained it to deal with Barton, which is fairly significant case law as it relates to sexual assault in Canada. So it relates everything back to Barton, which is a precedent-setting case. So you're effectively training AI to use specific parameters and apply them to your case on a go-forward basis. Carl, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I actually thought, I don't know if Paul has a comment on this, but that's exactly what it is. It's training, right? And so when you have an account registered that gives you access to GPT, individual conversations are saved if you have the feature enabled. It's enabled by default, and they're saved with your account. That's actually what lets you go back. So, if privacy is a concern, you can actually turn that feature off. Next time you log in, it won't remember any conversations. But if that feature is turned on, it'll actually, you can say new chat, paste whatever. And in that specific chat, that's where you can train it for different things. So one of those chats may be trained, like Gavin said, for RV Barton. Another one of those chats, you might want to, as your case is progressing, you might want to give it new content, and that chat will remember the latest stuff you've given it. So I think Paul has more experience with that than I do. Like having an ongoing conversation where ChatGPT knows quite a few of the facts. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say about that is what I do is I put in one of those chats. So I start a conversation, I label it whatever it is, correspondence with the X or whatever. And then I just start inputting information. I just start inputting emails. This is her response. This is my response. How would you respond to this? What do you think her next response will be? And as long as you ask all these questions in that thread in GPT, it remembers all of that stuff. And then later, what I've been doing recently is actually asking it to go back into these conversations and pick out facts and circumstances and stuff like that we had months and months ago, and it can actually remember all these facts and if you're worried about privacy, then keep sensitive information out of it, but it will remember. I use the same thread for correspondence with the X, and it's helpful. So
awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Carl. Kristen, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'm going to have to jump off the call pretty soon, but I just wanted to thank you, Gavin and Carl and Paul, also for this information. It's really instructive for me. And yeah, even though I have the law school training and a certain amount of writing skills, this is super useful. And because one of the main problems with like law in general, Canadian law, is it's not very truthful. Like it's full of a bunch of things that are bad. So even if you do all the work of learning the law, you end up having a bunch of untruth inside your head that you carry around. So just knowing that ChatGPT can do that kind of work, I feel just like frees up a lot of energy. And I like how it's leveling the playing field. And I learned a lot. I was a bit resistant, honestly, a little like jealous of ChatGPT, because I thought like, why did I go to school for that time and suffer and like get ground down by the process if I'm just going to be made obsolete? But like over this hour, I'm kind of like happy that those skills of mine are made obsolete, because I don't actually like using them. I find them painful to use and inadequate. So I'm happy that ChatGPT can be doing this. I feel relaxed, and I feel like just grateful, like that the kind of fake prowess that certain lawyers show can be leveled by these skills, because I think that fake prowess is full of like falsehood and isn't good. So I'm really grateful for this. I'm grateful for how you're doing it. The only question I would ask is like I mean, I don't know much about computer algorithms and such, but I wonder if there's things that are systematically missed in terms of the inputs that go into ChatGPT. Like, Paul, you were mentioning that the former one would spew out certain wokeisms. So I wonder, if there's a group membership and more men are using ChatGPT, does the algorithm change in a way that starts to, like, over time, like, skew it against its inborn tendencies, or there are things that it misses? That's just what I wondered.
Yeah,
But-
so I guess sorry, Kristen, was there something else? Okay, so a couple of things. I did some significant research on something called algorithmic bias, which is something that ChatGPT has been found guilty of. So it's effectively, it's an engine that's going and picking all of the information that's on the internet. And based on the fact that judges may have ruled in a left-wing slant in the past, that's effectively the data that it's pulling. And so there could be an algorithmic bias based on the amount of effective left-wing decisions that are made. And that could slant your output. I don't know if that kind of answers your question. Paul, did you want to comment on that? Or is that what you were talking about in terms of the wokeism, the algorithmic bias?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. The AI pulls information basically from the entire internet. So anything, I mean, for the most part, anything that's put on the internet, it's going to be pulling information from up until 2021 or whatever it is. So the more it tends to be that the leftist or the loudest, kind of in our society, the loudest seems to be heard. Doesn't necessarily mean they're the majority, but the loudest tends to be heard. And so that's kind of the bias that ChatGPT is also integrated with. But also I wanted to mention that these companies that own these AIs will, like if you ask it, I don't mean to take up too much time, but if you ask it to like fill the Grand Canyon with pudding, it can give you an answer, like how much pudding fits in the Grand Canyon. But if you ask it to fill how much some like blood fills the Grand Canyon, it's not going to give you that answer, just because of this bias, because of the companies they want. I've asked it to respond in the ways of like Hitler, just being curious of how it would respond, and it won't. For good or for bad, I'm just trying to understand more about this technology. But yeah, they're definitely tuned by the companies that own them. I know there's other services besides ChatGPT that I think there's like Boss GPT or something like that is more tuned to be more authoritarian, whatever word I'm trying to say, more authoritative.
Authoritarian,
yeah. And so there are different services that will, you can explore to get better results that you're looking for. But yeah, a lot has to do with the companies that own these AIs too.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Two more questions from Mark and then Gary, and then I'm just going to jump back into the presentation for one last quick thing on AI, which may be relevant to some or all of you. I'm sorry, for Canva. Gary, go ahead.
Okay. My understanding of ChatGPT is that the more people that use it asking questions in a certain fashion, the more information it actually uploads into its artificial intelligence. So on that basis, do you think if more guys use Chat GPT to help support the position of, you know, abuse against guys, that it could sway the responses that Chat GPT might give in the future, especially regarding societal position?
I'll open this back up to Carl and Paul. My thought is that it's using ChatGPT isn't going to change that. Having significant legal decisions will change that. So more guys speaking up about the negative impacts of parental alienation or false allegations or high conflict divorces or that kind of stuff, those legal decisions will start to influence the outcomes or the algorithmic bias from ChatGPT. But I don't think more guys asking those questions. And again, I'll come back and we'll go to Carl first and then Paul to see if you have any more information on that. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, I put my hand up earlier and then I put it down because I think Paul hit the point on this one. Even if it were that there was more factual influence, just from a technical standpoint, even if there was more factual influence from more men having conversations with ChatGPT and even giving it, you know, good arguments or whatever, at the end of the day, it's going to depend on the political climate because these companies. So OpenAI is the company that has ChatGPT, and I know that a lot of the money that's behind OpenAI is backed by Microsoft, right? So they've got a lot of money behind this project. They don't want somebody coming back and saying, hey, this said something that offends me, and they lose billions of dollars based on the current political climate. So that even if the content is there and the intelligence is there, there's a filter on the end of it. You know, call it the woke filter, is on the end of it to make sure that the company doesn't get in trouble for something ChatGPT says, and that's always going to curtail it. Now, again, on a technical note, and I'll keep it quick, I think the solution to that, ChatGPT is based on training weights. So there's actually open source software, and you can download the program and all these kinds of things, and there's different sets of training weights. And so it is possible, and Paul and I have tried to look into this a little bit about getting our own version running on a server and giving it the training weights that aren't biased and don't have those same filters and keeping those in private. So there is a hope of a technical solution in the future. And yeah, that's kind of I think that's my position on
that. Thanks, Carl. So a couple of things, just as a preface to what could potentially be a future seminar. Carl's working on some pretty amazing tech that'll help kind of organize and draft your documents. But I don't want to tease it out too much without Carl's permission. So just say that if there is another seminar that's posted with with Carl as a leader, that you probably want to attend that seminar. Okay, so Mark, last question before we move on.
Yeah, regarding saving your chats in the cloud or your threads in the cloud, if your device goes down, like, is there anything, or is there any cookies, or is there anything encrypted saved on your device that is saving those chats, or what happens if the device goes down? Can you pull those same chats up, threads, remembering all of that? Is it set up with your account in the cloud, or is there something set up on that device that would be concerning?
It's got nothing to do with what device you use or anything. So as long as you set up your ChatGPT account, it'll be associated with your account. So if you drop your phone in the toilet, it's not going to affect anything specific to your account. Cool. So I'm just going to switch gears ever so slightly. Go back to a quick screen share. Okay. So the next little bit of free tech that I wanted to touch briefly on is called Canva. And Canva I don't know if you can see, but Canva is actually the tool that I used to kind of create the seminar that we did today. That's it there. It's also the tool that I used to create all the graphics for the emails that you see coming from from GCMF. But specifically, I use it I guess I started using it to write books with my son. And this is a kind of a cool process that you can go through. I'm just going to skip over here. And open up Canva. If you're familiar with something called Photoshop or Illustrator, this is like Photoshop for Dummies. So one of the first books that I wrote was this one called The Smart Little Llama. And it's about parental alienation and dealing with parental alienation on on an age appropriate level for children. And then once I got this one up and published, we started effectively writing books of our own. And I have virtual contact with my son, but you can obviously do this if you have in-person contact with your children as well. So Canva lets you at no charge design and build books for your kids. And these are kids. There's another gentleman, another facilitator actually for the Nexus program that took this and did the same thing with his son, or maybe his daughter, who was 12 or 13 years old. Sorry, it's just taking a minute to load here. But on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll likely see as soon as this loads, it'll give you a bunch of backgrounds, and I effectively point my camera at the screen and let my son pick the backgrounds and then ask him what he wants to write on each one of those pages. So you can see kind of the, as it starts to appear here. So this is he wanted to write something about the zombie apocalypse. So the first thing he wanted to do was, pick that background. And then he liked this one with the bats. And I'm not sure why it won't show you stuff on the left here. Normally on the left-hand side of your screen, you have, oh, there we go. All the design elements that you could bring into this if you wanted to. So, he effectively told me over the phone, like, once upon a time, there was a castle that Dracula ruled. And I just went over here and selected text and then brought that over. And then again, went over here and went into design and search for a spooky background and then just drag that in. Oops. I don't know why it's taking so long to load. Oh, there we go. So essentially it's just a drag and drop editor, and you can layer different types of text on top of it. And we wrote and printed 4 books. Now he's 8 years old. So I sent printed copies. You see up in the top right corner, I don't know if you can see that, but in the top right corner of the screen, it says print photo books. And you can print 1 photo book for $28 and effectively make your son or daughter a published author. But we took it one step further and we went to something called Kindle Direct Publishing. And on Kindle Direct, this is through Amazon. So Amazon will, you upload the content that you built on Canva to Amazon. So this is the Smart Little Llama, for example, and you can upload it both to Kindle for a free or cheap purchase, or you can have the paperback, which is paperback version. You choose the price. Sorry, I'll just zoom in here so you can see what this is all about. You choose the price. Amazon keeps 40% printing the book, and they send 60% to you. So if you wanted to write a book on behalf of your children or have your children as published authors, what I did is I set up the Zombie Apocalypse and the Smart Little Llama as books, and the 60% of the proceeds of the sales of these books goes into an account for my son. So he's not only incentivized to to kind of write and be creative, but he also gets something monetary on the back end. So that's effectively it. And if you want more information about how to use Canva or how to set it up on Amazon Direct Publishing or Kindle Direct Publishing, you can shoot me an email and I'm happy to walk you through either of those processes, because the submission of the book that's for sale by Amazon is part of my family law submissions, as my ex tries to completely erase me from my son's life, which are incredibly compelling. And it's also a part of my criminal law appeal submissions, because I've kind of made good use of the time that I've had while on house arrest to do positive things for my son. So again, if anybody has any questions about how to implement either one of those two free services, and not only kind of free services, but Amazon will start to pay you for the books that you write. So that's all I've got for today. We'll kind of open the floor for further Q&A, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Just wanted to say thank you everyone for being here. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your long weekend.